Greek-thinking people. Hellenism is enforcing upon the world Greek thought, Greek ideology, and so forth. The Sadducees, who were the elitists, now keep in mind, that elitists, in other words, we refer to those people that are calling themselves the elitists as being the 1% today. Okay? These are the ones who have that money. Now listen to what it says again. They were liberal in their willingness to incorporate Hellenism into their lives, something the Pharisees opposed. So now you had these two factions existing. And what's interesting, again, these two, Pharisees, Sadducees, mixed membership among the Sanhedrin, which was the ruling body of Israel, or of the house of Judah during that time. Okay? So you had constant battle, constant strife. How can you get order out of that? Let's move on. The Sadducees rejected the idea of the oral law and insisted on a literal interpretation of the written law. Consequently, they did not believe in an afterlife, since it is not mentioned in the Torah. The main focus of Sadducee life was rituals associated with the temple. The Sadducees disappeared around 70 Common Era after the destruction of the Second Temple. None of the writings of the Sadducees survive, so the little we know about them comes from their Pharisaic opponents. These two parties served in the Great Sanhedrin, a Jewish Supreme Court, whose responsibility was to interpret civil and religious laws. Now think about that. Let's go to the book of Matthew again, chapter 22, for a little example of the Sadducees and their interaction with Mashiach. In verse 23 it states, "The same day came to him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moshe said, if a man die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. Now there were with us 7 brothers, and the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the 7th. And last of all the woman died also. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. Yahushua answered and said unto them, You do err. In other words, you're making a mistake. Ye do err, not knowing the Scriptures. And let me interject here. Not only did the Sadducees not know or understand the Scriptures, the Pharisees didn't know and understand the Scriptures either. That was a big problem because they allowed outside influences now to be interjected into the ways of the Most High. So let's continue. Ye do err, not knowing the Scriptures, nor the power of Yah. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the messengers or angels of Allah in the heaven. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have ye not read that which was spoken unto you by Allah, saying, I am Allahi Abraham, Allahi Yitzchak, Allahi Yaakov. In other words, mighty one of Abraham, mighty one of Isaac, mighty one of Jacob. Allah is not mighty one of the dead, but of the living. And when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine. But when the Pharisees heard that he put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. So now we see that he came against not only the Pharisees, but he also came against the Sadducees. Because neither of these groups were teaching the truth. And the sad part about it, especially referring to the Sadducees, when you see modern day Judaism today. And as I mentioned earlier, be it Orthodox or Conservative or Reform or Reconstructionist, see, everything under Orthodox is derived from Orthodox. And if Orthodoxy is corrupt, that means everything that's derived from it is also corrupt. Let's move on. Who are the Essenes? This is the third of the factions that existed during that time. And these are the factions that existed prior to the coming of Mashiach, which I know a lot of the Hebrews and the Israelites and the Jews out there disagree that Mashiach has already come. But we will take care of that in another lesson, and we will show spiritually, prophetically, scripturally, that Mashiach has come. But again, in the words of Mashiach, any Bible believer who doesn't believe that Mashiach has already set foot on this earth, Hebrew, Israelite, or Jew, you're in deception. You're in darkness. And you don't understand the word. But we'll show by the word that Mashiach has definitely come. But at this particular time, let's move on. Who are the Essenes? Now, the Essenes, unfortunately, their word doesn't derive from any particular Hebrew term, but I'll give you some information. At least anything I've found thus far. A third faction, the Essenes, emerged out of disgust with the other two. So this is the group. They didn't agree with the Pharisees. They didn't agree with the Sadducees. So what they decided to do, separate themselves from both and start something new. This sect believed that others had corrupted the city and the temple. They moved out of Jerusalem and lived a monastic life in the desert, adopting strict dietary laws and a commitment to celibacy. The Essenes are particularly interesting to scholars because they are believed to be an offshoot of the group that lived in Qumran, near the Dead Sea. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd stumbled into a cave containing various ancient artifacts and jars containing manuscripts describing the beliefs of the sect and the events of the time. The most important documents, often only parchment fragments that had to be meticulously restored, were the earliest known copies of the Old Testament. The similarity of the substance of the material found in the scrolls to that in the modern scriptures has confirmed the authenticity of the Bible used today. So in other words, among this particular group or this sect, they had ancient copies of what we refer to as the Old Testament or the Tanakh scriptures. All right? But not a whole lot about them there. But based on the information that we do have, we can see, as we're about to find out, that there was a person existing during the time of Mashiach who actually was one of the Essenes, or he believed in that lifestyle. Now we're going to turn to Luke chapter 1, beginning at verse 57, which reads, Now Elishibah's full time came that she should be delivered, and she brought forth a son. And her neighbors and her cousins heard how Adonai had showed great mercy upon her, and they rejoiced with her. And it came to pass that on the 8th day they came to circumcise the child, and they called him Zechariah, after the name of his father. And his mother answered and said, Not so, but he shall be called a Yuchanan, okay, or John. Now let's move down to verse 80, which states, And the child grew and waxed strong in the spirit, and was in the desert till the day of his showing unto Israel. Now he lived in the desert. In other words, he lived separate from mainstream society. In other words, he was a part of that group who didn't believe or follow the Pharisees, didn't believe or follow the Sadducees. But what you actually find, and I'm not getting into a lot of his story at this particular point, but if you do some research, he spoke out against both those groups, just like it is taught the Essenes did. Okay? In Matthew chapter 3 and verse 1, it reads, In those days came Yuchanan the Baptist, preaching in the wilderness of Judea,